1. Panel, ladies and gentlemen, it's a shame that when an industry is trying to change the world by creating new opportunity and new great things for many people, they ironically are the ones getting the shorter end of the stick. It's as though the state is trying to say, yeah, capitalism is good, go out and try to be an entrepreneur, go out and try to do good things, but at a point in which they face some difficulty by virtue of them trying to innovate, they are not helped. If you read the info slide and digest the motion, the reference of risk of bankruptcy is referring to the major esports organizations and industries at large because of the example that the info slide said, right? Like FaZe Clan stock, which is plummeted since the IPO price, which means that if there is no intervention or state welfare, then FaZe stock is gonna be delisted from Nasdaq. What that means is you won't be able to trade or invest in that company anymore, and there's a huge sunken cost for the company. There are 3 harms to that. Number 1, investors, whether big or small, are going to pull out, and that's significantly gonna cripple that company. Number 2, people who work in those companies are going to get laid off and be more of a burden to the state if the state doesn't do anything about it. And third, which is the most important, is it creates a bad precedent for the state and a bad reputation for the gaming industry at large, wherein people start pulling out at large scale, and people like companies who are thinking about going public will be afraid and worried about going public because they're gonna say, let's not do this anymore, there's no state support, it's a bad idea. So you stifle innovation and the capacity for the industry to grow as a whole, whether you're a big or small company. Opening opposition is going to win on both frames. The first frame of what happens if the state cannot afford it, because that's the biggest premise that opening government hinged their case about. To an extent, they misread the motion, but let's be charitable, right? The US government, during the 2008 financial crisis, spent over 700 billion US dollars to bail out banks in the name of corporate America. The esports industry in the info slide is 1.3 billion. So if we do some quick math, that's less than 0.2%, right? So we think that prevention is better than the cure. The motion says they're at the risk of bankruptcy, which means they're not bankrupt yet. So, if they're at the risk of bankruptcy, that is the point in which we need state welfare to be able to alleviate the pressure that they're experiencing for the reasons my partner already gave. It's super expensive and difficult to be a trailblazer in a new field. They're facing a lot of increased costs for their business because of inflation and other geopolitical things, just like any kind of business. So why shouldn't the state be able to intervene? In fact, prevention, as they say, is cheaper and better than the cure. At the point in which they become bankrupt, which is something that both sides do not want, we think that state welfare is a cheaper and better way to ensure that from happening. But fine, even if they do go bankrupt, we think we're gonna take the bullet and we're gonna say that the state should intervene as well because of the reason I told you. 0.2% of bailing out the whole industry is much cheaper than bailing out all of the banks in America that they did in 2008. Now let's win the second frame, right? What if the company has enough money? But again, if you read the info slide, they're not profitable, guys. They're not profitable because they're focusing on growth. Just like what we saw Uber and Grab and Airbnb and all of these change makers. Heck, even OpenAI at its infancy, and I think until now, is not yet profitable. There's a difference between growth and profitability. If you are a starting company trying to blaze a trail in a new industry, you incur all sorts of weird costs, right? R&D, you incur manpower costs, so many iterations to hire developers and figure out cool shit. You're not gonna be like, oh, Facebook, Amazon, all these successful companies now. Because the Magnificent Eight, or the 8 largest companies in the world right now, Microsoft, Google, etc., at their infancy, when they were creating the tech industry that we're all using today, like what we see with Zoom and Discord, all were not profitable. And during those times, the state did give welfare in order to alleviate pressure. This looks like particular things which include but are not limited to really being able to have some sort of incentive or being able to help them continue doing businesses as opposed to them going bankrupt. Before that, any POIs? Opening, closing, whoever talks first, go ahead. 3, 2, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. POI? Is there? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, moving on to my case, right? Well, I've also been arguing in my rebuttal. Basically, what we talk about in opening opposition is the opportunity cost of state welfare for the company and the industry at large, with the impact here being why this is better for the competitive landscape and how this spurs innovation. What did DPM tell us? They dismissed what my partner told you and said, oh, this doesn't matter to the state. But guys, these do matter to the state because these large companies in this new industry pay things like corporate taxes. The people who are employed in these companies pay a portion of what they earn in tax to the state. So by duty of state paternalism, the state has every incentive to be able to help out the very people who are seriously affected by this. And like I told you earlier, the point in which they do go bankrupt, the state is going to have to be able to pay for more money when they rely and become on a burden on the state when they lose their house, when they have to cash out their 401k, when they have to try and early redeem their pensions, when they become at the mercy of things like soup kitchens, charities, and other forms of state altruism which do exist. The state should use these taxes to be able to fund state welfare to prevent them from doing so. Because in status quo, we see the state already doing this. Taxes are proportional, guys, meaning the 1% or the rich pay more, the middle class pay less, and those who are not earning anything actually have tax breaks. So we think that these are legitimate extensions of state welfare to get a cheaper access to state services, a cheaper access to facilities, and some sort of methodology to be able to help them to get their business model afloat, to go through this difficult time, to be at a point in which they could gravitate towards profitability. So, if you want to save the state money, if you want to help people, help the industry, and help the landscape, state welfare is the preventive way to do it. We are very happy to take this debate. Thank you.